Well, hey, everybody. Today I'm talking with a man who's made a career out of saying what most pastors are scared to touch and doing it straight from the pulpit. Douglas Wilson is the senior pastor of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. He's a writer, a teacher, a theologian, and he's been shaping and shaking up Christian culture for decades. He's been called everything from a Christian nationalist to a provocateur, but what he really is consistent. He speaks biblical truth without flinching, and that alone is enough to set off alarms in modern America. He's written more than 100 books on theology, culture, and family. Whether you agree with him or not, you can't ignore what he has to say. Today we're going to dive into faith and politics and masculinity, and I want to get his take on something I've been thinking a lot about: neonatalism. This growing idea that raising families might just be the most rebellious thing that Christians can do in a culture that's forgotten what life is all about. So let's get to the interview. Pastor Wilson, thank you very much for being on with us today. First question I have for you is about the role of the church in kind of a post-truth age. What would you say is the difference between modern Christian nationalism and just biblical patriotism? Is it one and the same, or is there a difference?
Yeah, I would want to argue that they're one and the same. So if someone pressed me and said, why are you a Christian nationalist? I would say, well, I'm a Christian and I love my country. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Some want to distinguish the two because they don't like the negative connotations either that the word nationalism has or the connotations that are assigned to it. Nationalism makes some people think of dictators with mirrored sunglasses and goose-stepping soldiers and that sort of thing. But for me, I love my nation and want the best for her and want the best to be defined by what God says, not by what 51% of Americans may happen to say.
Yeah, it makes sense. You've written a lot about how the modern world has sort of forgotten what objective truth looks like.
Right.
What caused that collapse, and how should the church respond when truth itself is kind of a political football?
Yes. So basically, when Western thought, let's say the philosophers of the big thinks, and I'm going back to people like Hume and Kant, a few centuries ago, when we wound up walking away from God, one of the things we found out was that you have to walk away from truth at the same time. You can't have truth, objective truth, without a transcendent anchor. And since we decided that the world with all its striving could not know God, and Kant put the phenomenal realm and the noumenal realm out of touch with each other. We cannot know things as they really are. We cannot know the ultimate reality. That just cut us adrift. And so consequently, postmodern denials of truth are logically consistent, which is weirdly inconsistent, because why do we care about logical consistency? if there is no truth, why do we care if postmodernism is logically consistent?
Worldview that commits suicide on its face, because they're saying it's true that it's true that there is no truth. It's
right.
Objectively true that there is no objective truth, and obviously that if you believe that, I've always said that is kind of a perfect description of what the Bible calls depravity. That when people deny God, deny that ultimate truth, that He gives them over to a depraved mind, and therefore they can believe anything is true. Men can have babies and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Right, and you don't know what a woman is, you don't know what a man is, you don't know what up is or down. Basically, our Western culture is like a child's lost helium balloon that they let go of at the fair. We don't know anything anymore, and so consequently, everything reduces simply to power, which leads directly to tyranny, and and so Christians we need to go back up the chain and say, let's go back to fundamentals. Jesus rose from the dead, right? And because he rose from the dead, he owns the world. That's the fundamental Christian confession, that Jesus is Lord. And if you deny that, there are all sorts of downstream consequences that we are dealing with now.
That's great. You have written extensively about this getting into my favorite subject here, masculinity. You've said that softness in men leads to tyranny in nations. How do you make that connection?
Yeah, there are many routes, but basically, I'll tell a story. At the Constitutional Convention, someone proposed that the United States never have an army of over 10,000, a standing army of over 10,000 men, and Washington was chairing the convention, so he couldn't participate in the debate. But he leaned over to someone next to him and said, "This motion needs a rider stipulating that we will never be invaded by a force of over 15,000 men." Right. What this boils down to is the world is hard. Okay, the world is hard, and if men adopt a posture of softness, the world doesn't stop being hard. Right? They're still going to invade your country with 15,000 men. They're going to come after you. So if you are lazy or cowardly or effeminate or soft, that simply is a description of you, right? And I'll just quote John Wayne: "Life is hard. It's harder if you're stupid." Right? If you think that you can just sort of become a unilateral pacifist or a unilateral softling, that's not going to change the way the world behaves toward you. Well, it will change it. They'll come after you first. Look, we've got an easy mark. We've got a chump. We've got someone who will just roll over. And so consequently, I believe that the preventative measure that has to be there to forestall tyranny of any stripe, whether it's the jackbooted tyranny of 1984, or if it's the soft totalitolerance that we've got going on now. The deterrent that is necessary is tough men. Mm-hmm. Tough-minded, tough-minded, willing to take a hit, willing to stand between their wives and their children and the threat, whatever it is, and who are more than willing to go into the breach. That and only that is going to be the deterrent for a hard world that does not love your family.
So, I mean, why do you think the modern church has just become so uncomfortable with that kind of thinking? I mean, so many people say, violence never solves anything. Well, actually it does sometimes. Sometimes there is such a thing as righteous application of violence. And so why do you think the church has just thrown that out?
Yeah, basically we've listened to little inane proverbs. If you spank a child, you're teaching him violence. No, you're teaching him not to clock his fellow nursery inhabitant over the head with a toy, right? You're not teaching violence. What you're doing is teaching righteous violence that comes down on unrighteous violence. You're modeling what you want them to. I want my child whom I spank, I want them to spank their children in exactly the same way. I'm not violating the golden rule, right? What I'm doing is I'm instilling in them an understanding of how godly discipline works. And so, but some people throw out just sort of easy bromides, easy proverbs. You strike a child, you're teaching them violence. Well, every shrewd parent in the history of the world knows that's not true, right? It's not true. And when you say violence solves nothing, well, what does it mean to win a war then? Right? What do you mean it doesn't solve anything? Now, it might not solve everything, right? And I think that that would be a fair statement. It doesn't, and as C.S. Lewis says in his essay on pacifism, it may not solve all the promises, all the problems that it promises to solve. That's also likely. But to say that it doesn't solve problems is simply false. It solved the problem of Adolf Hitler. That problem is solved. It solved the problem of the Emperor Tojo. That problem is solved. And Hirohito.
Yeah, I really like Lewis's, that very well-known saying that all killing is not murder, just like all sex is not adultery. And then that speaks to the same topic. Now, when it comes to raising sons, for our listeners, what would you say are maybe the top three things that I remember reading your book and was kind of taken aback by the chapter, like you have to teach your son to drink a beer or something. But but what would you say are the most important things that a father should focus on in training sons?
So I would say number one, as you're training a boy, number one, love his mother. Okay, so basically, you want your son to grow up in a home that is led by a one-woman man, right? So you have committed yourself to one woman, and you've committed yourself to her children, who are also your children, and this is your son, your firstborn son, or whatever son it is. You are dedicated to them. You are all in, and you demonstrate how all in you are by your devotion to their mother. And then a corollary to that is teaching your son to honor his mother, right? So honor your father and mother, which is the first command with a promise. You want to require your children to honor you and their mom, not because you've got a need. You're not demanding it because of any neediness in you, but rather because you want the blessing to accrue to them. Okay, that'd be the first thing. Honor his mother and call him to honor her as well. I'm honoring your mom. This is how you need to honor your mom as well. The second thing is that boys need to be knocked down. Right? They need to be knocked down by someone who cares for them and loves them, a father, not some thug up the street, but within reason. They have to encounter the way the world is. There will be playground skirmishes where they have to apply the lessons that you're teaching. So dads and moms complement one another in this regard. Boys need to learn how to be tough and how to take risks, and that means that how high does the boy get to climb the tree? Well, higher than his mom wants and lower than he wants.
It's a good rule.
Right. So basically, it's not, you don't throw all caution to the winds, but boys really do need to learn how to be tough. And this toughness includes an intellectual toughness. So masculinity is not allergic to books. Okay, there is a genuine place, a significant place for godly scholarship in a well-rounded masculine individual. So basically, I would point to our military academies the way they used to be before we began admitting women, but there's still elements of this. There are still healthy portions of this in the military, despite the downgrades. But West Point and the Naval Academy were places where men who were leaders, athletic, physically on top of it, were also top scholars. They were also students. You don't learn to fly jet airplanes off of aircraft carriers by being an intellectual doofus. So basically, the second thing is you're teaching your sons toughness but this is toughness sort of across the board. Okay.
Rigorous life, not just outside, but inside as well.
Right. Right. It's so if now some boys are going to gravitate to the physical toughness, and they need to be okay. This is important over here too. Some boys are going to gravitate to the library. They're going to gravitate toward books, and they need to be well-rounded.
Sent outside once in a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That dad has to.
You haven't seen yet.
Correct. Then the third thing I would say for young men would be self-control. Okay, and this maps onto the second one, because when you're teaching toughness, one of the things you're teaching in that is self-control. But boys are oriented to their passions and their appetites, and when they're young, the passions have to do with things like lunch and competition. So boys who are being masculine, who have all the masculine ingredients, are going to be competitive, and they're going to be ravenous, and you want them to not sell their birthright for a mess of pottage the way Esau did. You want them to learn self-control. When they bite it and they're bleeding, you need to teach them to suck it up. Okay. That was a tough one. Okay, now blow it out. That kind of self-control. And part of the reason for this is there are two times in a boy's life. This happens once in the womb, and the other at adolescence, where their body undergoes a testosterone bath. Right. So that happens in the womb, and that also happens at adolescence. And when a boy hits adolescence, if he's at all aggressive and masculine and tough and all the things you want him to be, when he hits adolescence, all of a sudden the world fills up with girls. And if he has been undisciplined for his 12 years up to that point, undisciplined with regard to when he wants to sleep or get up, undisciplined with regard to what he eats and when he eats it, undisciplined with regard to his anger and passion in competition. And then all of a sudden, and his body fills up with testosterone, and he is confronted with a passion, the likes of which he has never encountered before. You tell me what's going to happen if a boy has not learned the principle of self-control. So that principle means that there are certain things boys can't learn unless they're throwing up by the side of the football field, or they learn that way. And discipline is a transferable concept. So and it's a fruit of the Spirit. Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. So those are the things I would emphasize. Honor your mother. Learn to be tough without being harsh. And learn to control your appetites. Learn to control yourself.
Kind of sounds like you're just quoting 2 Timothy 1:7. To the formula for not being timid, not being fearful, is power and love and self-discipline. Knowledge is power. Love your family and discipline yourself. So it's those three things. That's the formula the U.S. military uses, basically, to train soldiers to be a good soldier. So a good man is going to be a good soldier, and vice versa. There is a subculture, a very large and growing subculture in America, of young men that basically never get touched. They come from homes with passive parents. They go to public school. Of course, when you and I went to public school, you'd get spanked if you did something wrong. You'd get hugged when you walked in the door. You got touched all the time. There's zero tolerance now, no touching. And so they don't get touched at home. They don't get touched at school. They come home to an empty house because mom and dad are both working. They go down and they live in the basement and sit there and play video games and watch pornography. And so they're watching the most intimate of human experiences, but nobody will do that with them. And so they start to get angry. All this playing Grand Theft Auto is certainly going to not help them be more disciplined in managing their emotions. because it's
Right.
all about going out and just doing whatever the heck you want and committing felonies left and right. So they start to stew in their own juices. They get more and more angry at the world. And they start to blame women and blame successful men for the reason why nobody will do all those things I'm watching on the screen with me. And the FBI, I talked to an FBI agent the other day. He said that they've identified actually the majority of mass shootings in America over the last 10 years have been attributable to this sort of, they call it Incel movement, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with the Incel movement. What is your advice to parents or grandparents? Because so many young men are falling into this category. We went out to Activision at one point, and they had a thing up in the main office where all the cubicle farm was, that had the number of people that was playing their video games at any given time. It was like 24 million people when we were there. And they said the average age is like 31 of those guys. So it's unbelievable to me. But this is a huge problem for America. And I think we don't really understand the extent of it yet. I think that the Antifa, the trans movement, all of those things are just subsets of the incel movement, and sort of outgrowths of that. Some guys, they get so mad that they can't get a girlfriend, they decide to become the girl instead of. And so, how does a parent or a grandparent who's concerned about this approach their sons or grandsons or kids they love about this, and how can they inoculate them against it?
Okay, so you're right. This is a huge problem. It's an enormous problem. Another manifestation of it would be the furries and all of that. So, and some of these things, depending, I don't know where your viewers are mostly. Some of these things I'm going to say may be illegal in some states. So consult your attorney before implementing. So I'm going to paint with a broad brush here, and I know there are exceptions and there are difficult cases and so forth. But get your kids out of the government schools.
Amen.
Okay. Number one, get your kids out, because there is active grooming going on and active attempts to solve the problem that are making it worse. So not only do you have kids from this kind of background who wind up as shooters, but all of them have been on psychotropic drugs.
Yeah.
So the government school, just aside from what the school is teaching, the nihilism for young people, just aside from that, you've got a sign outside that says drug-free zone. Yeah, right, except for those administered by the school nurse, except for the prescription drugs. And the drugs that are administered have in the published side effects. The published side effects have to do with suicide and violence and so forth. And one of these shootings occurs, and one of the things we do is we blame the gun manufacturers. Mm-hmm. Well, we had lots of guns before this spate of shootings started. The thing we didn't have was the nihilism of the teaching, the school curriculum, and the attempt to deal with the lack of discipline by means of hitting the kids in the head with a chemical rock. So that's the first thing. Get your kids out of the government school. Secondly, related to the school, it would be the curriculum of the school, because the kids are being educated without reference to the holy God who created us. So as far as the school administration and staff are concerned, we are the end product of so many millions of years of chance evolution. We are meat, bones, and protoplasm, and that's it. And so when some kid goes around the bend, what do you mean bend? Define bend. He shoots up the school cafeteria. I think we ought to give that kid a posthumous diploma because he's the only one who understood the ramifications of what was being taught there. He graduated early and then shot himself. So points number 1 and 2 on the medication of what is a spiritual disease through drugs and through a black despair curriculum. Get your kids out of the government schools, and this is going to that has a financial component, which connects to the next item, which has a financial component, which is, you mentioned earlier, kids shouldn't come home to an empty house. Basically, mom at home is an essential part of mental well-being, mental adjustment. There's nothing like coming home from school at 3 and having mom there who made some cookies. And it's not, and it's the people who backhand that kind of thing, like she should have been an engineer. Yeah. Building a bridge or something when she could have been shaping immortal souls. Yeah. Good grief. So
I can't tell you how many women that I know who bought that lie and spent $100,000 going to college, racked up a bunch of debt, and then got married and decided they wanted to have babies. And when they had babies, then they decided they didn't want to go to work anymore, and they still had to pay off the debt. It's one of the reasons why I encourage all my kids to look. I don't have anything against college. Obviously, I think you should be as smart as you can possibly be, but don't do that to the exclusion of the natural order of things that God created.
That's right. And so my 2 daughters were college educated and did very well, but they were doing that because they were preparing themselves to be wives and mothers. And they are highly accomplished wives and mothers. But the whole idea that women can have it all, right? The feminist lie. You can have everything. Well, not without abortion you can't, and not without fruitlessness you can't. And even with those tools, bloody tools, you still can't, right? So basically, once in a blue moon, you will have some woman who is a genius off the charts and has 2 careers and does it all. But to point to that woman as though she's the template or the pattern for ordinary folks is just simply robbing young girls and women.
It's like saying every woman can make it through Ranger School.
Right. And robbing is, so basically that would be the next thing that I would say. And then related to that is have the entire family sit down at dinner at 6 o'clock every night, right? You sit down and you debrief from the day. You have a huddle. Life is a football game, and after every play, you come back and you huddle up, and you talk about what happened that day. The kids debrief. This is what Mr. So-and-so said. This is the scrape I got into on the playground. Dad helps them sort it out. Then they read from the Bible and they talk about, basically that kind of thing is cultural glue.
Very good, very good. That brings me to my last question, and it has to do with neonatalism. I went and spoke at a church in California and walked in, and it was like a daycare. I mean, there were like 400 kids in there, and only like 25 adults or something. I was like, what is going on? And they said, oh, we're a neonatalist church. The three guys I was standing there talking to, each in their 30s, had between them 30 children, 9, 10, and 11 kids. And they said, yeah, we're trying to retake California politics by outbreeding the liberals.
That's right.
And so I just wonder what you think about that. I thought, well, that's one way to do it for sure.
One way to do it.
I have 5 and wish I had 10, but my wife said she would miss me. So, so what do you think about that?
So, first, I'll put one caution on it at the front end, and then cheer it on. The caution is that Samuel would not have been more blessed if he had 5 sons who took bribes rather than 2 sons who took bribes. Mm-hmm. Okay, we don't want to be breeders for the other team. Right. So we don't want to have a bunch of kids and have more kids than we can feed, and then because we can't feed them, we have to put them in the public school, and then we lose them. Basically, use your head. Don't be an idiot. So that's the first thing. But that's my one caution. You're responsible to feed, care for, love, teach all your children, but when you've taken that role seriously and you've taken it on, children are a blessing. The fruit of the womb is His reward, the Psalm says. God only gave us 3 children. And that was the Lord's doing and not ours. He gave us 3. But between the 3, we have 18 grandchildren, and we have 4 great-grands with a 5th great-grand on the way. So our 3 children have 5, 5, and 8 children, respectively. And we gather every Saturday night. The family gathers and have a big Sabbath dinner together. And it is one of the best things that God has ever given me is to see all these kids, and to see them walking with the Lord. They're Christians. They worship the Lord. They love their people, and so there's no surly ones. There's no Halloween
strife.
Yeah, right. There's no strife. It really is a wonderful thing. So now, and this is, we don't have a rule in our church, like a prohibition of birth control or anything like that. But we do have a positive teaching from the Word of God that families are important, that children, one of my books is Why Children Matter. And I think that we have to have an eschatology that budgets for the future. And the most practical, tangible evidence that you have a robust eschatology is the number of children you have. You've got a positive view of the future, and when people have a bleak view of the future, the whole thing starts to wither. So we recently did a demographic study of our church congregation. We have a number of sister congregations here in our small town, and in our church community, in our church, about 40 some percent of our church population is age 14 and under.
Wow.
Okay. And I said, how many preschool kids do we have? And it's over 300 kids, 1 to 0 to 5, and that's in our church community. So basically, there's this bubble coming up of kids, and all of them, incidentally, are receiving a Christian education, all of them. And that means that 10, 15 years from now, there's a big transformation in our community coming. And then you compare that to what the secularists are doing. They're having 1.2 children so that they can have something to put in daycare, and they're not educating them well. And on top of that, they're pretty lonesome, and they're veering off into all the problems we talked about earlier. I would say, I'm sorry, that's not the future.
Well, I mean, that's not even replacement rate, so of course not.
Right.
We see how the Muslim community is outbreeding everybody in Europe, for example, and how, for example, the UK has essentially become a Muslim country at this point. And everybody could see that coming 20 years ago. When I was a stockbroker back in the 90s, we used to talk about that in 25 years, the UK is going to be a Muslim country. So that is not great to see, except for the fact that we can see a template there, and we can say, if we are faithful in procreating and growing the kingdom of God through procreation, that maybe we can take back our country too.
That's right. That's my message. Love Jesus, study His Word, make babies.
I like it. I keep trying to get my wife to have more. She won't let me. All right. Well, that's all that we've got time for today, Pastor Wilson. Thank you so much for taking some time to come on with me. It's a real honor, really, to get to speak with you. I'm a writer, and I have a bunch of books, but not 100. And so the prolific nature of your writing is a great motivation to me to get off my keister and get out there and do something important.
I tell people that I write for the same reason that dogs bark. I'm trying to make the little voices in my head go away, and it's not working.
That's great. Well, thank you again for being on with us, and I hope to have you on again sometime.
Great, thank you.